it did come with some challenges. So increased labor would be probably the biggest effect on our bottom line. Additional employees have been added to answer the phones, and runners are needed to take orders out to the guests waiting in their car. So my Nebraska bakeries have now entered phase 3 starting this upcoming Monday of Governor Ricketts' directed health measures. We anticipate our guests' desire to celebrate all of the life's events.
United States, Canada,
Mexico,
Panama, Haiti, Jamaica,
Peru,
Republic, Dominican, Cuba, Caribbean, Greenland, El Salvador,
2,
Puerto Rico,
Colombia, Venezuela,
Honduras, Guyana, and still Guatemala, Bolivia,
then Argentina, and Ecuador, Chile, Brazil,
Costa Rica, Belize, Nicaragua, Bermuda, Bahamas, Tobacco, San Juan, Paraguay, Uruguay, Suriname, and French Guiana, Barbados, and Guam, Norway, and Sweden, and Iceland, and Finland, and Germany, now in one piece. Switzerland,
Austria,
Czechoslovakia, Italy, Turkey, and Greece, Poland,
Romania,
Scotland, Albania, Ireland, Russia, Oman,
Bulgaria,
Saudi Arabia,
Hungary,
Cyprus, Iraq, and Iran, there, Syria, Lebanon,
Israel,
Jordan, both Yemen, Kuwait,
and Bahrain,
the Netherlands, Luxembourg, Belgium,
and Portugal,
France, England, Denmark, and Spain, India, Pakistan, Burma, Afghanistan, Thailand, Nepal, and Bhutan, Cambodia,
Malaysia,
then Bangladesh, Asia, and China,
Korea,
Japan,
Mongolia,
Laos, and Tibet, Indonesia, the Philippine Islands, Taiwan, Sri Lanka, New Guinea, Sumatra, New Zealand, then Borneo, and Vietnam, Tunisia, Morocco, Uganda, Angola, Zimbabwe, Djibouti, Botswana, Mozambique, Zambia, Swaziland, Gambia, Guinea, Algeria, Ghana, Burundi, Lesotho, and Malawi. The Spanish Sahara is gone. Nigeria, Chad, and Liberia, Egypt, Benin, and Gabon, Tanzania,
Somalia,
Kenya,
and Mali,
Sierra Leone, and Algeria, Dahomey,
Namibia, Senegal, Libya,
Cameroon,
Congo,
Zaire,
Ethiopia,
Guinea, Bissau, Madagascar, Rwanda, Majorca, and Cayman, Hong Kong, Abu Dhabi, Qatar, Yugoslavia, Great Mauritania, Pennsylvania, Monaco, Liechtenstein, Malta, and Palestine, Fiji, Australia.
Sudan.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Johnny Ray Show. Ashley Babbitt's murderer has still not been named. And in fact, they have released a statement saying that there is going to be no charges brought forth against the person who shot and killed Ashley Babbitt on January 6th. Daunte Wright, of course, we know his shooter. We knew his shooter the day it happened, not less than an hour after it happened. Speaking of Daunte Wright, new evidence has been brought forth that is, well, not the greatest for Sir Daunte Wright. The closing arguments of the Derek Chauvin, George Floyd trial today. Trevor Noah is, as usual, a dunce cap, and Maxine Waters, as usual, inciting mass violence in the streets. Now, thank you for joining me on this episode of the Johnny Ray Show. Hopefully, you're tuned in every week. Hopefully, you're going to the store. Hopefully, you're purchasing merchandise to show your support for the single greatest broadcast to happen this side of the Mississippi, or that side of the Mississippi, depending on where you're at. If not, make sure to go to JohnnyRayShop.com to pick up your brand new merchandise, such as this Patriot 316 t-shirt. I know what you're thinking. Didn't you take that from Stone Cold? No, he took it from me. Also, make sure that if you're watching on YouTube, that you like, share, comment, subscribe, share it far and wide, because I still have 4 days of ban on Facebook that I can't do anything, so I need your help with that. On to the show. January 6th was a day in modern history that will never too soon be forgotten. That is the day that Donald Trump had a huge rally at the Capitol, well, near the Capitol, a few miles up the road from the Capitol. And then some people took to the Capitol to peacefully and patriotically let their voices be heard.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. Today we will see whether Republicans stand strong.
Some took to the Capitol to cause a little damage, to make a little ruckus, to light a fire, if you will. I'm not sure what they were thinking, but they did. They went there with the sole intention of causing disturbance. And they did just that. Among these people was a veteran of the Air Force, Ashley Babbitt. Ashley Babbitt she was a patriot. She was an American patriot. Should she have been there? Maybe not. Was it illegal for her to be in that building? No. The building was open. Barricades were moved by the Capitol Police and the security people there. So, was it illegal for her to be there? No. It was not. By any criminal means, no. In no court of law could you state that it was illegal for her to be there. The police were in the mob of people, not arresting people, not forcing them to exits. We'll see some footage later on. You will see most of the people that were there, and I say most, were walking between velvet ropes as if they were on a tour of the Capitol building. And as Ashley Babbitt was seemingly trying to climb through a window from one hallway into another hallway, she was shot by an unknown person who can only be described by his forearm and his hand holding a gun in the videos. Now, it is the 19th of April, so well over 4 months. That person's name has not been released. That person's position, either with Secret Service or Capitol Police, has not been released. Now, Capitol Police do have a policy of not having to, they have the ability to not have to conform like certain departments in the United States do. They do not have to release information. This is true. But I find it particularly funny that it's 4 months now and he has not been identified, or she, I guess it could have been a very manly hand. They have not been identified, yet Derek Chauvin is on trial right now for the second-degree murder and manslaughter of George Floyd. We knew his identity the day it happened. They all but doxed Derek Chauvin the day it happened. We knew Officer Porter, the lady officer who shot and killed Dante Wright the day it happened. They all but doxed her the day it happened. And yet this person who shot and killed an unarmed white woman inside the Capitol building, who shot nobody else inside the Capitol building, has not been identified. And now they are saying, this is a headline from NBC News, no charges for Capitol Police officer who shot January 6th rioter, Justice Department says. Now, why do you think that is? Does that sound like maybe white privilege, I suppose? Is that what this is? It's awfully ironic that the same people who've all but decapitated and publicly lynched officers for the last 8 years now, every time that an officer shoots and kills a person of color, they are all but publicly lynched in the streets. All of a sudden, they support the police. All of a sudden, the left loves cops. But only this particular cop, because they still hate Derek Chauvin, because as we'll see later, Maxine Waters has made her opinions very clear. So, my question is why is this particular cop being protected? That's the question that everybody on the right is asking, and everybody on the left is ducking and dodging until their heart's content. Now, they released this statement in the Wall Street Journal. It says, officials examined video footage posted on social media, statements from other officers involved, and the other officers and witnesses to the event, physical evidence from the scene and shooting, and the results of an autopsy. Based on the investigation, officials determined that there is insufficient evidence to support a criminal prosecution. Insufficient evidence. It was on video. There is no more and no less evidence in this particular video of Ashley Babbitt being shot through a broken window by an unidentified man holding a gun than there was in the Officer Porter, I still can't catch her name right, in the officer that shot Dante Wright. There is no more and no less evidence in the Ashley Babbitt shooting than there was for Derek Chauvin kneeling on the, now we know, shoulder, not neck, shoulder and back of George Floyd. And yet, the State Department finds insufficient evidence. Insufficient evidence. And they say the autopsy would have a bullet because he shot her in the neck. I don't understand what more an autopsy would tell you about whether or not this was murder or not. There's a bullet in the lady's neck. Why is this particular officer being protected? That's the question. I've still yet to hear an answer. Speaking of Dante Wright, there are some new videos that have been released of some actions prior to Dante Wright being shot by Officer Potter or Porter, whichever her name is, of him. And as you can see, it is him holding a weapon. It is also shows him, let's see here.
You can see the 20-year-old waving around a firearm, holding a bottle of Hennessy, flashing large piles of cash, and smoking what appears to be marijuana. According to court records, the warrant that was issued for Wright's arrest was related to aggravated armed robbery. Wright and another man were charged with first-degree aggravated robbery in 2019. According to the affidavit, Wright allegedly pulled a gun out on a woman and choked her when she refused to give him $280. He was arrested and released on bond, but his bail was revoked in July because he failed to keep in touch with his probation officer, fled from police on a previous occasion, and was in possession of a firearm. That warrant was active when Wright was pulled over on Sunday.
There you have it. So, the left has this little game that they play where when a person of color gets shot or assaulted by a police officer, whether it be justified or unjustified, they don't wait for facts, they don't wait for evidence, they just do what they do. They have a game where they like to portray the victim as a saint. They like to make them look like they are just the greatest thing since Wonder Bread. And then when the right finds Swiss cheese size holes in the fact that they aren't quite patriotic saints, then the left likes to throw accusations of how they are victim blaming. The right is victim blaming. Listen, I'm not victim blaming. Should this man have been shot? No, he shouldn't. Should the officer have even been a police officer? No, she shouldn't have. Anybody, I said it before, and I'll say it again, anybody who makes a mistake of thinking that their taser is a firearm and their firearm is a taser, or any of the above, should not be an officer. They should have better training. But the left doesn't want better training. They want defund the police. So, I am all for if a person who was a good person, who was a decent moral person, who was not committing a crime, who was not armed, who was not resisting arrest, is shot or assaulted and killed by a police officer, I will stand beside every last person that screams justice for insert name. What I won't do is I will not sit by and allow a person who used a gun illegally, mind you, who used a gun illegally, had a warrant for that particular charge, jumped bail, skipped a court date, who committed aggravated assault with a gun by choking a woman and stealing her $280, who, when stopped by the police, resisted arrest, pushed an officer away, kicked another officer, attempted to get into their car where they potentially could have had said illegally owned firearm, and tried to flee arrest. I will not show any kind of sympathy for that particular person. Just will not happen. I've been called horrible. I've been called every name in the book, and that's fine. I will not sympathize with that. It's just not going to happen. I will not sympathize with the George Floyds of the world. I will not sympathize with the Freddie Grays of the world, with the Michael Browns of the world, with the Eric Garners of the world, with the Trayvon Martins of the world. I will not sympathize with them. I'd be more than happy for you to come and talk to me about it. You can plead your case. I will plead mine. At the end of the day, you will not change my mind that these people, while they may not have deserved to die, were certainly not saints, martyrs, patrons. They were certainly not the good of the world. They just weren't. So for you to muralize them, patronize them, canonize them, put up statues to honor them is utter ridiculousness. It's Orwellian, at the very least. On to the moron of the day, the dunce cap of social media and media in general. I think he's probably the stupidest person on television currently, and that says a lot because I have a lot of admirers on the internet. Trevor Noah decided to do a little segment on his show, and he decided to talk about something that I've already discussed in previous episodes. You can go back and listen to those if you would like a complete analysis of my view on this particular subject. Take a listen to what he had to say about conservatives and the transgenderism in America.
War story right now is being pushed by people with actual political power, and it involves transgender people. Now wait, I know what you're thinking. Scary trans people? Isn't that a throwback from like 5 years ago? There was an outrage cycle around bathrooms. You remember that? They're gonna be kidnapping our children and wearing dresses while they poop. But even though none of that scary stuff actually happened, they've already kicked off an exciting new sequel.
It has become a new front in the culture war. Republicans across the country are pushing to ban transgender students, and often specifically trans girls and women, from competing in school sports.
It's only a matter of time. You know what I love about Republicans? Is that when it comes to major issues with tons of evidence, like climate change, or coronavirus, or gun violence, they're like, let's wait until we see more evidence. But now, there's an issue that barely even exists, and they're like, we don't got time for evidence. There's a plastic trophy at stake.
Well, Trevor Noah, that's because it's more than just a plastic trophy at stake, you dunce cap. That's because it's about girls being physically assaulted by biological males who pretend that they are females to make themselves feel a little bit better about themselves. Okay? That's what this is about. This is not about trophies. This is really not even so much about men using the restroom with the girls, although that's a big thing because I have a 9-year-old daughter, and the first guy that goes into the bathroom with my 9-year-old daughter will come out a biological female with female parts. I promise you that. Now, he goes on to completely lie about his theory on what conservatives talk about. Take a listen.
Now, the one thing that people making these laws always point to is a single story from Connecticut a few years ago. That's not evidence that trans kids are stealing opportunities from everyone else. Aunt Becky's kids have taken away more slots on sports teams than trans kids.
Very true. And she went to jail. You remember that? Trial, jail time, all that. Yeah. But the fallacy that he's portraying here is just that. It's a fallacy. There are many, many, many examples. Not just the one in Connecticut, although that one has been talked about. You're absolutely right, Trevor. But I've got 5 that I have right now to talk about. Not including that one. So, for you to say the one, bit false. And I'll go over those individually, but I want to finish what this dunce cap had to say before I do that. This is what he finished with.
Honestly, I think conservatives are missing the entire point of youth sports in the first place. Because it's not really about the tiny minority of kids who will go on to get scholarships and perform at an elite level. It's not about that. It's about kids achieving their personal best, developing good habits and self-esteem, and learning to bully the chess team.
I think that you have misconstrued youth sports entirely. We're not talking about kids in t-ball who have some boys and some girls on their team. We're not talking about my 9-year-old daughter playing soccer with some boys. And even they are separated. They had a boys team and a girls team at 9 years old. Do you know why, Trevor Noah? Because even the coaches at 9-year-old soccer understand the concept that boys are biologically stronger than girls. It's biology. You always say trust the science. You people are so hypocritical. You liberals are the biggest hypocrites I have ever seen in my life. And Trevor Noah, you're right there at the top. You want us to trust the science on COVID, trust the science on climate change, but you assholes can't even trust the science that biological males are different than biological females. You people are freaking retarded. You are so stupid, I can't even get past the stupidity to tell you facts at this point. I can't wade through the bullshit. But I'm going to try. First, the first instance that I'm going to tell you about is that of Fallon Fox. That is the biological male who believes he is a female, who went into the UFC and crushed a biological female's skull in a fight. Look at this. Biological male crushes a female's skull with his knee. That wasn't in Connecticut. That was in UFC. That was a fight of a man, a biological man with long hair who said he was a female and beat a biological female to the point of his knee crushed her skull. That's not the only one. What about Hannah Mouncey? Hannah Mouncey is the biological male who played handball and viciously tosses women around like a rag doll. Like a rag doll. Look at this. This is ridiculous. She's throwing people around like she's China in the WWF. That is not females. That is not how females are. That is a biological male dominating women in a sport that includes throwing people around like a doll. Or Laurel Hubbard, who basically annihilated the women's powerlifting contest. Look at this. That is a biological man breaking the powerlifting title, the record for powerlifting in a women's division. Yeah, that right there. Look at that. That is ridiculous. Or, in another instance, is Mary Gregory, who I would almost consider to be Triple H in the 1980s. Look at that. This is a biological male who won 2 gold medals and shattered the squat record in the women's division. Look at that. That is ungodly. And one of the biggest cases next to Fallon Fox is Rachel McKinnon, who also won 2 gold medals in the bicycling, whatever they call it, in the women's division. Look at that. That's a biological male just annihilating the competition because biological men are stronger, are usually faster. Now, it's crazy to me, but I did a little bit of little bit of investigative journalism, okay? And I looked up, even if you don't go to physical contact sports, just in baseball alone, which is probably one of the most non-violent games, with the exception of the occasional hitting of a batter, the longest college, and I did college specifically because that's the latest that you really have a men's and women's division to show. I can't put, friggin' Ken Griffey Jr. against a girl in friggin' sophomore in college. That just wouldn't be right. So I put the longest home run distance recorded in both men's college baseball and women's college softball. The men's longest it's tied between Edward Julian and Pete Alonso from Auburn and Florida, 429 feet. That was the longest two. 428 was third, 425 was fourth, 421 was tied for fifth, and sixth. So that's the men's. Now, what would be the women's, you asked? The women's, and it took me a long time to find this. This is probably the most hidden statistic for college girls softball that I could ever find. And it took me almost 2 hours of searching to find this. I watched videos of the live home run that was hit. They didn't state it. I know in college baseball and Major League Baseball, when you hit a home run, it pops up, shows a little flash in the corner, tells you how long it was, how the trajectory, the angle off the bat, how fast it was coming off the bat. They give you all the statistics. Women don't do this. For whatever weird reason, they don't do this. But I finally found it in an article with the local paper of where it was, which it doesn't state it in the article, but it was the Ostman's, I don't know what college that is, but it estimates that Jordan Roberts hit the longest in women's college softball home run up to January of this year, because that's when it happened. And that was, it said the estimated distance was 300 feet, give or take a few. So even if you say 305, 310, even if they were off by a couple feet, up to 10 feet, that is 110 to 120 feet less than a man. And I know people are going to say, well, the softball, it weighs more, it's bigger, it's harder to hit off the trajectory, and I get all that, I do. But none of that accounts for 100 less or more feet. What counts for that is strength of the swing, strength of the player. It boils down to that. Biological men are biologically, genetically, DNA encoded stronger than women. I'm not saying they're better than women. I'm not saying that they're more cool than women. I'm simply saying they are biologically, DNA encoded stronger. Bone mass, strength, lung capacity, all of this attributes to biological males being stronger and more athletic than biological females. There are anomalies. China from the WWF probably could have hit a 430-foot home run if she was a baseball player. That girl had arms the size of my legs. So yes, there are anomalies. But in generalities, biological males are stronger than biological females. So when you tell me that men, biological men, who just simply get to say, I feel like a woman, and play contact violent sports with biological women, that is bad. That is not a good thing. If you want to make a whole league of transgender people, by all means, go right ahead. They'll probably get more viewership than most women's sports. I'm sorry to say, probably will. But when you have a biological male such as Fallon Fox crushing the skull of biological females, that doesn't sit well with how the spectrum of human morality is supposed to be. Speaking of morality, what I can't abide by is stupid people saying stupid things. Now, Maxine Waters is no stranger to saying stupid things. In fact, she has a past of saying really stupid things. Saying things that are hypocritical. Saying things that are not supposed to be said out loud. She was a huge advocate for the Rodney King riots back in the 90s. She was a huge spokesperson for the liberals attacking, harassing, getting in the faces of anybody who supported Donald Trump. She is a huge advocate of the BLM and Antifa riots going on right now. And how do I know this, you ask? Because she said it. Take a listen.
Not just manslaughter, right? I mean...
Oh, no, not manslaughter. No. This is guilty for murder. I don't know whether it's in the first degree, but as far as I'm concerned, it's first degree murder.
Congresswoman, what happens if we do not get what you just told? What should the people do? What should protesters on the street do?
I didn't hear you.
What happens?
What should protesters do?
Well, we got to stay on the street. And we've got to get more active. We've got to get more confrontational. We've got to make sure that they know that we mean business.
More confrontational. They have to know we mean business. This is from the person who rallied every liberal leftist in America to impeach, to convict, to publicly lynch Donald Trump and any person who supported Donald Trump around the time of the Capitol Hill, what they call a riot, what they called an insurrection. She said that Donald Trump saying fight like hell was an incitement to violence when he said peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. What the left told you that meant was break into the Capitol, tear things up, set things on fire. But when Maxine Waters states that we need to stay in the streets, if we don't get a murder conviction on Derek Chauvin, we need to stay in the streets. We need to become more confrontational. And yet crickets from the media. If it is not a conservative, Republican, right-leaning outlet, they are not talking about this hardly at all. Because that is America in 2021. That is Joe Biden's America. That's Kamala Harris's America. Now, do you think that people took her serious? Well, shortly after that, not even 2 hours after that, there was a drive-by shooting who shot and wounded 2 National Guardsmen not mere miles from the very spot that Maxine Waters had said that very statement. Also, there have been mass BLM riots, Antifa riots, burning down buildings all across different cities in the country. This particular video caught a little bit of fire, if you will, no pun intended, of what has been stated as Black Lives Matter. It's not stated in the video, but it's been said, and I can only hear what's been said, of a group of African American people destroying themselves and a Waffle House.
Oh shit! Oh shit! What's here? Hold on, what the fuck's here? Here! Oh, hold on. I ain't going in there, bro. I ain't going in there. Damn, nigga, get your ID, all that shit. Man, go, man, go,
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you white supremacy. I give you Black Lives Matter. I give you black people being hunted down and shot in the streets. I tell you what, when watching that video back, I can't help but notice the 2 Caucasian white supremacists in the corner. Did you catch that? Here's the fight. And I'm gonna pause it so you can see the white supremacists in this video. And right there in the corner. Right there. Yep. Them white supremacists sitting in that Waffle House eating their scattered, covered, and smothered hash browns like the white supremacist hood wearers they are. This is only partially funny because of the fact that this is what they do to each other, and yet white supremacy is to blame. When this video came out, it was the white supremacists to blame for the group of black individuals fighting, beating up, assaulting the group of black individuals, while the 2 white supremacists sit in the corner and eat their raisin toast that's usually cold with no butter, with apple butter on top of it. It's probably overcooked because it's usually burnt. That was the narrative that's been stated. Now, Regina King went on Jimmy Kimmel not too long ago, and she made a very silly statement, and I will let you hear what she had to say right now.
I tuned in to people with pitchforks and being escorted down the steps after protesting very calmly by police officers after they had broken windows, and the divided states of America.
I think this has been mentioned a lot, but boy, it sure seemed different the way this protest was handled compared to the last protest we had in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, well, that's the point that I'm making. They were actually gently escorted down steps, which was no tear gas, no. It was wow, quite the vision.
Yes, it's quite different from the January 6th riot at the Capitol and the year-long Black Lives Matter riots that happened in 2020. The biggest difference would be the well over $2 billion in personal property damages that the Black Lives Matter / Antifa caused. The more than a dozen deaths that Black Lives Matter and Antifa caused, the more than 100 hospitalized. I think it was up to like 500 and something injured or hospitalized law enforcement officials. The multiple federal buildings, including a city capitol in Portland, a police precinct in both Portland and Seattle, a courthouse in Kenosha, Portland, and Seattle, multiple police cars set on fire. So yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, Regina King. You did see a big difference between the handling of the people that broke a couple of windows and were walking single file most of the time through the halls of the Capitol building, and the hundreds of thousands of people across the country that burned down black-owned businesses that had nothing to do with George Floyd or Jacob Blake, or insert martyr person here. The people that attacked people that were trying to simply drive down the street where, you know, cars are supposed to go to get to their homes. And luckily, because the internet is forever, we have just a little bit of, you know, video comparison here. Okay, so this is in Milwaukee. This is a Black Lives Matter. It's, you know, just some guys throwing smoke bombs and smoke grenades around. So that's fun. We also have here.
Sit down. Sit the fuck down. Sit the fuck down. Shut it off.
Oh yeah. Look at that white supremacy there.
Grab the keys. Grab the keys. You got the keys? There's no keys. Hey, bro, you're not leaving, bro. You ain't going nowhere. Put your ass down. Sit your ass down, bro. Sit the fuck down. Hey, I'm not getting your hands back. The keys is lost, my nigga. It's lost. Stay the fuck down, nigga. Nigga, if you don't keep your hands so I can see them. Hey, homie got the keys. It's not even homie got the keys. It's good. Oh, who is you? Yeah, who the fuck is you, my nigga? Hey, Johnny, thank you so much for coming out here. I'm an older guy. I'm just trying to get my homie home. No, get the fuck out of here. Sit your ass down. He's sitting down, bro. Till the cops come, nigga. Till the cops come, nigga. Where the fuck is your keys, nigga? Answer would do what you do. It's a real thing, bro. Come on now.
I know. I ain't trying to hurt no one down there.
What you mean you're not trying to hurt nobody, nigga? You just shut the fuck up, nigga. You was fucking backing up your leg forward, nigga. Fuck is you talking about? You ain't right here. Bitch, fuck is you talking about? Fuck is you talking about? You weren't trying to hurt nobody, nigga. Fuck is not you, not you. You fucking loser! Fucking try and run people over! Fuck you, bitch! Get the fuck out of here!
White supremacy at its finest there. Now, I don't know if you can make out what was going on there. So I'm going to narrate it just a little bit for you. That was a white man who, with his girlfriend, was driving down the road, saw a black man attempting to what looked like rob, and later confirmed trying to rob a white woman at the corner of an alley and the road he was on. He stopped, and his girlfriend got out of the truck and attempted to intervene to help. She was assaulted. She lunged back into the vehicle where the man drove away. These particular Black Lives Matter patrons did their civic duty by chasing him down and forcing him off the road into a light pole, drug him out of the truck, took the keys and locked his truck, dragging his girlfriend out of the other side, tossing her to the ground, locking his vehicle, taking his keys and throwing them onto the roof of the building that they were at. And then surrounded that poor man, assaulted him several times, as you saw, punched him in the face, forced him to the ground, told him to stay there, called him a lot of unsavory names, and then said that they were holding him there until the police arrived. When the police arrived, they dispersed just long enough for the main assailant to come around and kick this man in the head, knocking him unconscious and to the ground. That is Black Lives Matter. That is the great saviors of the black African American race. Now, this would be a clip of, I believe this is Kenosha during the Jacob Blake rioting, I believe. As you can see, fiery, but mostly peaceful. Okay? This is Black Lives Matter. This is another
Walk your motherfucking ass through there! Walk your fucking ass through there! Don't go this way!
I know.
I made a path for you! I made a path for you! Hey, you motherfucking self! Don't touch anybody! Oh, hell!
Again, one lone white person surrounded by a mob of BLM rioters, told he can't walk the way he wanted to walk, that he had to walk around. He had to walk through a trash can area that they knocked over to give him a place to walk. Now, of course, I'm sure this was when, if it was ever even played on media, I'm sure it was spun that they were polite, loving BLM supporters who were just trying to help a gentleman get back to the sidewalk where he could walk peacefully to wherever he needed to go. No, they assaulted him. They grabbed him. They pushed him against a wall. They pushed him over the trash can. They tried to take him to the ground. He a little squirrely. And they tried to assault him by punching him in the back of the head several times. Peaceful. Peaceful Black Lives Matter. We also have Baltimore. As you can see here, this young black male is car surfing on a car that's on fire. There's a car on fire, throwing objects at what I can only assume would be probably police officers or other civilians. There they are, blocking streets, roadways where, cars are supposed to go. There they are, assaulting more people. That's black on black assault. They know no limits. They will attack each other. They will attack white people. They are just patriotic protesters, supporters of the Americas is what they are. Now, let's contrast that, because I don't want to be known as biased. I don't want to be known as the guy who doesn't give the whole story. So let's contrast that with some clips of what happened during the January 6th Capitol Hill incident. They seem to be shouting, "Hang Mike Pence, stop the steal." So hang Mike Pence, probably not the best thing. Here they are. They seem to be throwing some objects. This is a cop. Seems to be fearing for his life. He's not engaging. He's running away. And here they are, walking into the halls of Congress. Well, the hall outside of the Congress area. Here they are. They're filling up the opening, the lobby area. Here they are, marching down the halls. Just look at all that violence, all that fire. That's. Did you see that cop car on fire right there? Oh, you didn't? Because it didn't happen there. They went into their broken windows. Yes, broken windows indeed. What I particularly want you to take notice of is it's the Jaden X and John Sullivan is who they took this particular set of clips from for this CNBC news cycle. Now, I want to remind you that the Jaden X and John Sullivan, they are the same person, and they are actually BLM supporter, protesters, sympathizers, and Jaden X actually runs a chapter of BLM, and I guess antagonizers or provocateurs, if you will. That would be Jaden X. Here they are, walking through velvet ropes as if they are on tour. Look at the cops. They're so fearful. All the fire and the damage going on, the atrocity, the just ridiculous. Oh, that guy, he jumped over the velvet rope. He must be a provocateur. He's got to be the guy who's breaking windows here. Oh my God, the chaos, the damage. What will we ever do with all that damage they did to the Capitol building? So, to wrap up between BLM and Antifa and the Capitol Hill incident, known as the big insurrection of January 6th, I think it's safe to say that they shouldn't have been treated the same. They should have been treated much, much differently than each other, because one was fiery, damaging, deadly, and the other was a couple hundred, maybe, people inside a Capitol building with a few broken glasses, a couple of doors that got ajarred, and only one person died in that incident, and that was a protester shot at the hands of a Capitol police officer who, as we stated earlier, has been yet to be named and is now not being charged with any crime whatsoever for a lack of evidence. And lastly, before we get going tonight, I'm going to give you an update. The closing argument started today in the Derek Chauvin trial of the George Floyd murder, and I've went over the testimonies in some detail behind the paywall, so make sure that you get a subscription. It's $4.99 a month or $49.99 for an annual subscription. With the annual subscription, you do get a free t-shirt and a free Johnny Ray Show tumbler, so don't forget to check that out. Also, make sure and stop by the JohnnyRayShop.com. It's JohnnyRayShop.com. Pick up your merchandise. They have the Patriot 316 t-shirt. We also have the Biden Remorse t-shirt. We have the There Are Only Two Genders t-shirt. That's brand new. Make sure and go check that out. Get it today. Use discount code DEMENTIA and get free shipping. Okay? Because we know when you have dementia, you forget to pay shipping. Discount code DEMENTIA, free shipping. Now, so the prosecution started their closing arguments by introducing us to George Floyd, who apparently we didn't already know.
May it please the court, counsel, members of the jury. His name was George Perry Floyd Jr., and he was born on October 14, 1973, in Fayetteville, North Carolina.
And I'm Johnny Ray, born August 26, 1988, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Now that we got the introductions out of the way, what say we hear a closing argument, eh? Okay, so after he introduced George Floyd, he then told us that that the situation between Derek Chauvin, the Minneapolis Police Department, and George Floyd needed a little compassion.
Floyd said, "I'm not trying to win. This was a call about a counterfeit $20 bill. All that was required was some compassion. Humans need that. People need that. But more fundamental than that, and more practical, at that time, in that place, what George Floyd needed was some oxygen. That's what he needed. He needed to breathe. Because people need that.
Yes, people need oxygen to breathe. I'm so glad that you could tell us that. Now, what George Floyd needed was to not be a criminal, to not resist arrest. What he needed was to get into the police car like they tried to do before putting him on the ground at his own request. I've played the video ad nauseum of George Floyd requesting to be put on the ground outside because he, in his words, can't breathe. when they were trying to get him into the police car, he said several times, "I can't breathe," while nobody had their knee on his neck, while nobody was even so much as near his chest or neck. They said, the prosecution said that he said, "I can't breathe," something like 27 times. Maybe true. I didn't count. But I can tell you for a fact, I've played the video ad nauseum, that for a fact, 5 different times he said he couldn't breathe while he was standing up, and they were trying to get him into the back of the police cruiser. And it's not like it was a small police cruiser. It was one of the Ford Explorers. It was roomy in that Ford Explorer. Meanwhile, he said, "I'm claustrophobic," when they pulled him out of a car that he was driving. You don't get much more unbelievable than that. If a man is trying to not go to jail, don't you think? I mean, it's almost been a motto. Well, it has been a motto ever since Hands Up, Don't Shoot went away. Freddie Gray started, I think it was Freddie Gray. It was one of the multitude of martyrs that they've decided to patronize that started the "I Can't Breathe" movement. They've been saying this. People have been saying this for years, trying to get out of being arrested, trying to gin up a little bit of notoriety, trying to gin up a racial divide. So yes, he may have said "I can't breathe" 27 sometimes. But I know for a fact that he said him at least 5 times in the video of them trying to get him in the back of the car when nobody, not even the horrible, bad, terrible Derek Chauvin, was anywhere near his neck or chest to stop him from breathing. No. What was keeping him from being able to breathe properly were the 4 times the legal dose of fentanyl that he ingested. Or possibly the partially chewed speedball that the doctor specifically stated that they tested and came back conclusive with George Floyd's DNA in the floorboard of the police cruiser. Could have been the meth that was in his system, or a combination of all. But it certainly wasn't, and that's undoubtable, that it was certainly not Derek Chauvin putting him in a restraint that caused him not to be able to breathe. Period. And then he went on to say that Derek Chauvin just didn't listen when George Floyd stated that he couldn't breathe.
Humans need that to breathe. And he said that. And the defendant heard him say that over and over. He heard him, but he just didn't listen.
Just didn't listen. Okay, Mr. Prosecutor, if you were a cop and you pulled up and you attempted to subdue a man, detain him and arrest him, and he resisted, and he shouted, "I can't breathe," when nobody was touching him, he shouted, "I can't breathe," when they were trying to put him in the back of a cop car, he shouted, "I can't breathe," when they gently laid him onto the ground, he shouted, "I can't breathe," when you had him in a restraint. What do you suggest? Do you suggest that they just let him go? Do you suggest that they just uncuff him and let him stand up and walk around? Not be detained? What would your suggestion be, Mr. Prosecutor Man? Law school may have taught you how to word how the jury will feel. But clearly, law school did not teach you that when you're trying to detain a criminal who is actively resisting arrest, they may lie. They may not be 100% truthful. I know. Fringe, crazy, cray-cray. I get it. No criminal would ever lie to try and get out of being arrested. I know. Spoiler, they do. So, at one point, the prosecution stated that George Floyd was not on trial. And I don't know why this wasn't here, but it should have been. Let's see. Yes.
Now, also need to be clear, this is not the trial of George Floyd. George Floyd is not on trial here. You've heard some things about George Floyd, that he struggled with drug addiction, that he was being investigated for allegedly passing a fake $20 bill that there was never any evidence introduced that he knew was fake in the first place. Right? But he is not on trial. He didn't get a trial.
He is not on trial after you spent at least a solid 30 minutes of your closing arguments telling us everything from his date of birth to how he cuddled with his mother. And a lot of this I didn't show. Go watch the closing argument for yourself. You'll see nothing that I'm saying is out of context. You've told us his date of birth, how he cuddled with his mother, up into including the current time just before he was killed, to how he had a loving family who loved him and supported him and were always around him. But he's not on trial. No, what you're saying is that you want all the good stuff about him to be able to be admitted to the court, but you don't want anything of his past and what led up to this particular incident. You don't want him to look like a bad guy. And I get it. That's your job as a prosecutor of the person that is charged with killing him. But you don't get to pick and choose and cherry pick what is admitted when you yourself start by giving us all this information about his good side. That's not how any of this works, Mr. Prosecutor Man. On to the next lie. This is the last one I'm going to talk about because there was an hour and 45 minutes worth of lies. And that was where, well, two. I got two. You said that this was all because of a alleged counterfeit $20 bill. First of all, alleged implies that it could or could not have been. This has been tested and it was verified as a counterfeit fraudulent $20 bill. And then you say that he didn't even know was counterfeit, except for the young gentleman who worked at the store where George Floyd attempted to pass said counterfeit $20 bill, who came outside on two separate occasions to try and convince George Floyd and his two passengers, one being his girlfriend Mama, who coincidentally, that's who he was yelling for, The liberal left would like you to believe he was a hurt man, a man who was suffering, yelling for his mother. No, he was yelling for his on-again, off-again girlfriend, who had the nickname Mama. It was in his phone. Her phone number was listed in his phone under the name Mama. That was her nickname. He was yelling for her, not his mother. You won't hear that on the liberal media. You heard it here. And of course, all the sources will be in the description as follows. And his drug dealer, who he had purchased drugs recently from, in the back seat of said vehicle he was in. This young man from the supermarket came out twice to confront George and say, listen, the 20 you gave me for the cigarettes, it's a fake bill. I just need you to either give me real currency to cover the product, or I need you to give me back the cigarettes, because otherwise they're going to take this out of my pay. And twice, George Floyd and his associates brushed the young man off, mocked him, and pushed him away, and told him to get away, go F yourself. Okay? On 2 separate occasions. So for anybody to say he did not know it was counterfeit, complete and utter fabrication. He knew the first time that man came out and told him, hey man, this is not a real bill. I need a real $20 bill to cover the cigarettes you bought, or they are going to take it out of my pay. I don't want to lose $20 of my pay, which is, even if you worked, even if he was making minimum wage, that's a couple of hours. That's a lot of hours of his day taken away because George Floyd decided he wanted to steal, effectively, a pack of cigarettes by passing off a fake $20 bill to try and purchase them. So for anybody to say he didn't know is an outright lie. This prosecutor outright lied, and any liberal media conglomerate that tells you otherwise is an outright lie. He then goes on to describe when the paramedics arrived.
You saw the video. You saw the point when the ambulance arrived, and finally, after a paramedic got out, and the defendant still did not get up, and the paramedic tapped him, and finally the defendant got up, and they lifted Mr. Floyd onto that gurney, and you saw the way he was not, there was nothing there. His head had to be held to prevent it from falling to the ground. He was completely limp. The defendant had to know that. He was there. He was on top of him. And he was on top of him.
And he was on top of him. Yes, because he was resisting arrest. Refused to get into a cop car when they tried to arrest him. Yes, he was on top of him. You're absolutely right. And as the vast amount of witnesses testified, the vast amount of them testified that that was a legitimate restraint and that it was a use of force that they seemed to believe was necessary. While we're talking about paramedics, though, why isn't any of the paramedics being charged? Because one of the biggest gotcha moments for the prosecutor was that Derek Chauvin didn't roll him over and perform CPR when he became limp, when he supposedly stopped moving, when he stopped struggling. Why didn't they roll him over and perform CPR Well, one of the witnesses, as I've said before, testified that that's not a requirement. But why wouldn't the paramedics be charged? If the prosecution, if the state, if the people on the left want to lambaste Derek Chauvin for not performing CPR right there on the street in front of everybody, try and resuscitate him, why aren't they going after the paramedics who, spoiler alert, they didn't try and resuscitate him on the street either. They put him on a gurney, put him in the bus, and were on the way to the hospital before they tried to resuscitate him. Why wouldn't they be brought up on charges? Just a question. So, that is about the gist of what the prosecution had to say. And here is what the defense's closing argument was.
Everything that guy just says is bullshit. Thank you.
I mean, that's pretty much what the closing argument was. That wasn't exactly the closing argument. I know. Sorry. But that was pretty much the gist of it. He just basically ran down how everything that the prosecutor said was complete fallacy. Now, going back to the Maxine Waters thing, the defense attorney did mention that he was requesting a mistrial because of the tension surrounding this, in particular to Maxine Waters publicly stating that there should be more confrontation and people should take to the streets. And here's what the judge had to say as regards to that.
I'm aware of the media reports. I'm aware that Congresswoman Waters was talking specifically about this trial and about the unacceptability of anything less than a murder conviction, and talk about being confrontational. But you can submit the press articles about that. This goes back to what I've been saying from the beginning. I wish elected officials would stop talking about this case, especially in a manner that is disrespectful to the rule of law and to the judicial branch and our function. I think if they want to give their opinions, they should do so in a respectful and in a manner that is consistent with their oath to the Constitution, to respect a co-equal branch of government. Their failure to do so, I think, is abhorrent, but I don't think it has prejudiced us with additional material that would prejudice this jury. They have been told not to watch the news. I trust they are following those instructions, and that there is not in any way a prejudice to the defendant beyond the articles that we're talking specifically about.
Now, a couple of things. A, kudos to the judge for standing up and saying that political people should stop talking about this particular case, because it is damaging. As much as he wants to say he doesn't think that it's any damage because the jury has been told not to watch the news, to me, it is damaging, because the jury is going to hear about it. They are going to see it, because unfortunately, in today's world, everything is at an instant. Everything is right there on your phone. So you could tell them to not watch the news, and they cannot turn the TV on and still see things like that being said. And I don't really know of anybody, I doubt these 12/14 jurors are not getting on social media. I find it hard to believe that they are not seeing what is being done and said in the outside world about this case. And unfortunately, I do believe that that is going to weigh heavily on the decision that they have. I do. I pray that it doesn't. Unfortunately, long gone are the days of the OJs and the Rodney Kings and the huge trials that make news everywhere, that the jury could be sequestered and not hear the fact that Black Lives Matter has stated that they are going to riot even more than they already are right now if he doesn't get convicted of murder. And I find it funny, Maxine Waters said she wants nothing less than murder, and murder in the first degree, and that's not even what he's being charged with. So it's almost like she's setting it up. She's setting it up for more riots, no matter what the case. So my question of the day, if you're on YouTube, comment down below, comment on Twitter, hit me up on Facebook. Let me know what you think the outcome of this trial is going to be. Do you think that he's going to get convicted? Do you think he's going to get convicted of all charges? Do you think he's only going to get convicted of the manslaughter of, do you think it's going to be an acquittal, a hung jury? What are your suggestions? Personally, I think, based on the evidence presented, I think personally he should be acquitted, because the prosecution did not meet the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt to convict him of either of the charges. In my opinion, I'm no lawyer, I'm no judge, I'm no anything. I'm just a commentator on the political scene. Do I think that they're going to acquit him? No, I don't think they will. I think it'll either be a hung jury or they will convict him of, at the very least, the manslaughter charge, to try and somewhat give some sort of appeasement to the left, and which isn't going to change anything because they're still going to riot. But I do think that's what's going to happen. I hope not. I hope that they come back and they acquit him, because the prosecution did not, they far from met the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, in my opinion. So I will definitely, as soon as the ruling comes in, as soon as the jury comes back, I will make sure and do at least a small segment, if not an entire show on that. So make sure and click the notification bell on YouTube so that you are notified of all new episodes. Make sure to check us out on Rumble, on Spotify, Apple Podcast, SoundCloud, anywhere where audio podcasts are available, as well as here on YouTube, Rumble, and anywhere where video podcasts are, because I am trying to be everywhere that I can be. Again, make sure JohnnyRayShop.com. Grab the new merchandise, Patriot 316, because Johnny Ray said so, And until next time, as usual, good night. God bless.